Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Hero and his head here, and I am very excited to bring you guys the first build video that I've done since that large debut of the new free camera mode. So I'm super excited to bring you guys this footage, and towards the end when I do the montage, show you guys that fantastic new camera footage. So let's go ahead and get started. So for this build in particular, I kind of wanted to do, a lot of people have brought up doing a build on like a Lagoon platform. And I've done a Lagoon platform build before on my shorts, and a lot of people seem to really like it, but I didn't want to do just like essentially doing a rebuild of Flats Lagoon, because there's only so much you can do with just one, so I ended up going for like a tiered city vibe, and I like how it turned out. I think it turned out pretty good. So first thing I did is I dropped this small shack here, and the reason I dropped the small shack, I've explained it in previous videos, but essentially once you create the first building, it creates an established outpost, and so it makes, if you have to save and reload, you don't have to place down that little town marker nearly as much, unless you're adding things like functional generators or anything of the sort. So place that down, and then I start adding my Lagoon platform. So I dropped the first one super low to the ground because the idea was that it would be like a tiered city, right? So second one I played around with for a little while, and like I said, my goal was to make this second platform use the stairs to get up on the top of it. I wanted to kind of have like a multi-tiered city effect. So I got the second one in place, and then, once I messed with that a bit, I added a second one off to the side, and in full transparency, I ended up deleting it later and replacing it with something else. But I wanted to kind of have multiple avenues because it looked a little too straightforward when I was originally putting it together. It's just a platform with a higher tier in the back, so I kind of wanted to add a little more variation, and so I dropped that one there, but I end up not using that second one and putting something else there. So once I do that, as stated, one of the first things I always do is drop a gate. So this particular process of figuring out what gate to use was really tedious. To be honest, this entire build was incredibly difficult to do. I think it took in total, when I was done, about 2 hours. And a lot of that's because, as you're going to see, there's a lot of I get halfway through an idea and then I realize that I hate it, and I end up redoing it, or there's a lot of like really big micro fitting that's going on where I'm using little things that I end up not really wanting or changing, or all the others. So I dropped this big one here, the one that I used on the Holy Nation build. I ended up not going for this one because I was halfway tempted to put walls around the outside, or at least to kind of like close off the gate from the rest of the Lagoon platform. And the walls on that big one are really difficult to use in confined spaces, or if you don't have much room to like rotate. So, I continued to go through the gates. I ended up settling on one of the mid-tier gates, like a gate 3, I believe it was. And so, like I said, this whole video is just a lot of me going through and redoing stuff and testing, a bunch of nonsense to get everything working properly. But I do end up coming to terms with the gate that I want to use, which is the gate 3 here. I drop it down, and then I actually lower it so that way the little raise up area is no longer there. Gate right into the floor. And then one thing I really wanted to do on this build was use the towers. I don't use the towers enough in my builds, which stinks because they really are a fantastic tool. If you guys are wondering why I have so many buildings in my build menu, it's because I am using the Forgotten Cities mod, or the Forgotten Construction mod. I don't remember. I think it's it's Forgotten Buildings. Yeah. So I'm delusional. The Forgotten Buildings mod. So that's where a lot of these extra things are coming from. So yeah, I wanted to use the towers. I don't feel like I use them nearly as often as I should, because they're fantastic once you get them to work. The problem is you have to place them down prior to the wall. And you'll see one of the things that I always do when I build my walls is I want them to be that full length where you only have the one blue arrow pointing outward. I hate the little wall segments. I want full bits of wall. And like, I understand why the segments are there, of course, but like, I don't want them. I want full bits of wall. So I drop the towers down before I do anything. and I dropped the wrong ones. These ones were too bright. They did not match the gate whatsoever, and that's because I used the wrong ones. So I had to go through and I had to use the old ones. And so once I dropped those down, I actually put those right along the side of the wall there and rotate them so they're kind of facing out. And the idea was just to kind of close off the gate from the rest of it. Like there's no reasonable there's no reason that anybody couldn't just like hop the side of that area there. So I kind of wanted to put something to break it up a bit. And the tower was my way of doing that. Especially since like this is going to lead up into where like the main keep is, I ended up playing with a bunch of ideas up there later. And after a while, I managed to get one that I really liked. So I get this into position, and I spent a lot of time micro-moving this. The reason being is that I really wanted to make these towers accessible. And after I dropped these in, I actually put two little bridges on the stairs that lead from the stairs up to the towers. And unfortunately, I didn't test them too much, but I didn't even test them on screen. I'm pretty sure I tested them later when I stopped recording, but they don't work. They didn't work. So I'm sure I could get them to work. I didn't get a chance to really mess with them, but I did fiddle with them a bit and try to get them to, be functional, but they just weren't. So, I do a lot of micro movements here trying to get these in place, and it ultimately, didn't really matter too much because, it didn't work. So, which sucks. But it's okay. That's the nature of, using the Shift F12 menu, is that it can be a little bit fickle sometimes, but with enough adjustments, I'm sure I could get it to function the way I want, but it is what it is. So a lot of micro movements. This base in particular, as I was going through and building it, this is probably one of the more challenging builds that I've ever done, trying to get it to work. And one of the reasons it was so challenging was I didn't want it to just, like I said, be a recreation of Flats Lagoon. I've done Flats Lagoon before. On one of my tips and trick videos, I did basically a recreation of Flats Lagoons, but with walls in the front, and they were a bit more defendable and functional. But I really wanted this to feel like its own independent city, and not only was it independent, I wanted it to feel self-sustaining. And so a part of that self-sustaining idea is that it needs to be large. It needs to be large in size, because it has to have all of the accommodations that would be required of a self-sustaining city. So I really like this gate. I raised it up a bit so that way it kind of covered up the stairs and acted as the stairs for it. And I just really like the flow of it. It's got a really good flow to it in the way that it feels, and it's a really good setup. So I was super stoked about that. Yes, my character is Sekiro from Sekiro. I needed a really buff start character so I could get over to this particular area in the Howler Maze without difficulty of getting mauled by crabs. So I used the Sekiro mod. So I played with a little bit right here. I thought about maybe putting walls like lining, not necessarily on the tower, but actually like bordering the tower with these walls, right? And so my thought was that I could like bring it down and then have it border the wall. The platform with these walls, and it just, not only could I not get the walls to work in a functional way, I could have put them down and then manually moved them, but I really didn't want to do that too much. I picked the wrong walls here again. There's a lot of options with the Forgotten Buildings mod, and so I frequently will pick the wrong type and have to go back and redo it. But I played around with towers here too. I thought about maybe putting them here, but I couldn't find a spot in which I thought the tower would look good and also be functional. And I didn't want to just like throw towers on every corner. I felt like that would have looked a little cheesy. So I really played around with these walls for a little while, trying to get them into an angle that I thought was good and that would be viable. And I almost did at one point. You'll see in just a second, I take one of them and I rotate them into place. And I just didn't like it. I mean, it kind of blockaded the rest of the build off in a way and sectioned off the build in a way that didn't feel necessary, right? It's not like they added any real defense, because my turrets won't be able to reach the front gate from there anyway. So they didn't really add anything to the build at all. So I kind of just skipped past that, And So next, I played around with them for a couple of minutes trying to get them in place. Like I said, I really experimented with this whole thing, but I couldn't find anything that I liked or that was going to, give me that feel that I wanted. So a lot of micromanaging because this build was a mess. Like I said, I think this thing took me about 2 hours in real time to do. 2 hours and like 20 minutes in real time to do, just because of the scale of it and the amount of times that I just like went back and stopped doing anything. So I decided to kind of move on from the wall for a minute, and that's what I usually do if I start to get frustrated or I don't have a defined concept in mind for something. I will jump around between like tasks a lot. So I was struggling with the wall and I wanted to get the inner keep kind of worked out. Originally I thought about using this HQ mod, this HQ building here, but after I put it into place, it just looked super out of place and not right. I ended up going back and removing it, and also I couldn't figure out how I would tie that in with the rest of the platform. Right, there's still a lot of like space here, and there's not really much happening. So that was kind of what I was thinking there, and I hadn't quite decided if I wanted to use that building, but again, I kind of just jumped to a different area while I'm working out the details. So I wanted originally to go for like a mixed usage of buildings, right? So it kind of looked like it was put together over time from various people. Maybe it was originally like an outpost of the Second Empire or an outpost of the Tech Hunter that the Tech Hunters would come in and later retrofit. But I didn't end up sticking with that either. Basically, the first half of this entire video is going to be, well, half is dramatic. The first like 25 minutes of this video is me making decisions that I will later go back and undo because I can't make up my mind on anything. So, but I was satisfied with the end result. So, and I hope you guys will be too. So I just started dropping a couple more buildings in places, just trying to give it like a busy, city street vibe. I wanted there to be like alleyways and like walkarounds and to have it feel kind of compact. Like I wanted you to feel like when you walked up onto this platform, it was like you were entering a different world. I wanted when it's filled with NPCs and they're all kind of loafing around doing their own thing. I really wanted it to feel like it was an economic center, like it was a massive hub of trade, and that this is effectively like a secondary HQ for the Tech Hunters. Not that they would necessarily be the dominant faction on this base, but like my idea in mind was that this would be a self-sustaining city that maybe is run by the Tech Hunters or at least has a high Tech Hunter residency just due to its kind of remoteness. The people that live out here, they're lifers. They spend their entire life out here on this city. They don't get out much. It's the only safe area until you get into the UC. So I kind of wanted to lean into that and make this really like big self-sustaining economic hub. So I dropped quite a few more buildings throughout this whole process, and I was like, I've dropped a couple more buildings. Let's start dropping some different kind of building types, because I wanted to diversify it a bit. I wanted it to be like a combination of like a melting pot of architecture. So you have like more buildings and ramshackle walls and sandstone towers and stuff like that. So I end up trying to do that, and I'm a big fan of having towers, at least in some of the corners, not all the corners. I don't want to put towers in all the corners, but I'm a big fan of the tower buildings for both the normal towers and the other ones. So I ended up dropping a couple of those around, but so now I started implementing these storm houses, and this particular situation here, I didn't want to just line the outside with them, and I don't want all the buildings facing the same way because again, I wanted this to feel like a compact city, and so I drop these more buildings down and I get them into place and I'm super satisfied with them. And then I move to something else. I start dropping a couple other buildings and I start looking for maybe a use of the Y house because I don't get to use the Y house that often. I never actually hit confirm before I like back out of this particular section, and I end up having to replace those two storm buildings because I never confirmed them. So there was, I just backed out, and then I come over here at one point and I'm like, oh crap, where did my where'd my storm storm houses go? I didn't ever place them, so that was me deciding that I didn't want to do the HQ. I opted against it, and then I remembered these outpost buildings, which I think would be perfect on the corner because they have that kind of like that base that would almost make it seem like it's not sitting on the platform, but it was built off of the platform, and then like it was built around the platform with the corner in mind, but it's not on the platform itself. And I thought that was a really cool idea. So I start looking for a way to kind of integrate that. And I don't remember if I put one in this corner. I don't think I did, but I do end up dropping, I think, 2 of them in 2 different corners because I just really like the way that it looks. Yeah, I end up settling for up here in the corner, right here in the inner corner to kind of break up some of the space. And also it would give me a way to more easily defend the front gate. My thought was they could kind of go around the back and it wouldn't go, jut out enough to where they could shoot at the front gate if they were like beating on the gate. But it does come out enough to where, they can go out there and they'd have a better range to attack people that were coming towards the gate. And then, eventually the idea is that like you would fill this base with, bounty hunters and mercenaries, and if you're using the settlers mod with settlers just kind of to act as NPCs that are loafing around. So the inside of the city would be fairly well defended as well. And I think because of the remoteness, they wouldn't be really too focused on the immediate defense just because the place is so remote. I mean, the most they have to worry about is maybe crab raiders, but who knows? Maybe they're friendly with the crab raiders. I don't think I've ever actually done a crab raider playthrough, so honestly I've barely interacted with the crab raiders, which is probably something I shouldn't admit given the sheer amount of lore that I consume and put out for Kenshi and that I create for Kenshi. I don't really spend that much time with the crab raiders. I'm not a huge crab guy. Lo-Fi would be deeply disappointed in me to hear that I'm not as big of a fan of crabs as they are. I mean, so right here is when I started trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the Citadel. And so I dropped the Y building because I literally almost never use it, and I wanted to see if I could incorporate it. And then I was going to use these the longhouses here. Sorry, I almost said L houses. These longhouses to kind of branch off of it and create like this really unique shape with maybe a rear, because there's a rear door in the ancient model of the Y house. And so I was like, maybe I can create this kind of almost like fenced in backyard for the main keep. But the only way that I could get the shape that I wanted where it wasn't like hanging off the edge, because again, I'm a perfectionist. So like you see that little corner that's peeking off to the side of the Lagoon platform, that would be that's a no-no for me. I can't do that. And so, I kept playing with like micro measurements and stuff of where it was at and like tilting it, trying to get it so that way all of it was on the platform, but I also still had like a sizable area in the back. And so I got it into a shape that worked, and then I remembered that the door was on the wrong side, and so it would make it largely inaccessible. And so I scrapped that wasn't gonna work. And I played with a couple more ideas, and then eventually eventually I just ended up going with the station house. The station house is always the good way to go. I did try think about maybe a swamp dome acting as the centerpiece, but I ended up going with the station house. But I'm actually really happy with the end product that you guys are going to see for the main keep. I put a lot of thought into it, and I would argue that it is probably my most well placed and most I use a lot of buildings in a very small space, and they're all very functional. And I think that in terms of making like an upper keep, it turned out very well. I'm actually very happy with it. So, I raise up the keep to a relatively good height because I want it to stand kind of tall, but I don't want it to be too tall because I'm actually going to take one of the towers and I'm going to branch it off of the main building there. So I kind of have like a little lookout tower that can also act as like a sentry point too for the castle. So I drop this right here, and then I raise it up using the Shift F12 so that way the stairs become accessible. And unlike the bridges, I know that this one works because I do it literally all the time. It's like my favorite thing to do when I'm building these types of buildings, so I know that it works. So this particular section, I didn't take me nearly as long as everything else once I had a concept in mind. That's something that I find happens a lot when I'm doing these kinds of builds, is that early on I really struggle coming up with my initial idea, but once I get there and once I create that concept and I kind of have a general direction or a vibe that I realize I'm going for, things move way quicker. So I use the old version of the L house because the door is in a different spot, and so it makes it a little bit more feasible for what I was going for, which again is that really compact castle vibe, that upper keep that is very much isolated from the rest of the city. And whoever's living here, whatever high-ranking member of the Tech Hunters, or maybe like a former noble that created his own nation, or whatever it is you end up you could choose to do with this, they would have a very large keep with a barracks and maybe their own storage for their own goods, or lost technologies that maybe they're hoarding or studying. And so I wanted there to be a lot of buildings here, and a lot of different buildings being used, because there would be a lot of people moving throughout this little, throughout this like facility, right? This was just me being absolutely neurotic. I wanted to line the two logs up that were sticking out of the buildings, so that way it kind of looked like they were built in place, like they were deliberately placed that way. And it kind of connects the buildings. It's little things like that, that I try to tie everything together, and more often than not, they're just so absolutely unnecessary. Absolutely unnecessary. So, drop a couple storm houses, and I'm just trying to fill space right here. I want to connect as many buildings as possible to really fill up this space. That little back corner there ends up being where I drop all of our windmills, so you'd get a steady stream of power, but I put them far enough back, and the idea of that was I wanted to separate the power supplies from the rest of the base, because if they were to get attacked, this is a particularly dangerous area to be, and power is really important to the denizens of this particular city. They don't live in really close proximity to another nation or another faction that is going to assist them. They're very independent, and the idea of this base is that it's a base where you don't really ever have to leave. It's self-sustaining. It's self-sufficient. You come in for trade, and but the people that live here, and that they don't leave. So unless, of course, they're going out to gather supplies, or search for artifacts or anything of the sort. But so I wanted to make sure that the power supply was well protected, and that's why I'll end up putting those in the back, because power to these people would be wildly important. So I dropped all these storm buildings up here, and that was around the time I realized, like, no, I can't go more and mix the buildings, because there's too much of a weird imbalance of like sandy, dilapidated-esque, kind of like hobbled together, but they're actually very well constructed, but like concrete buildings, and then the Moore collection, which almost looks a little too clean in comparison. So I ended up dropping the Outpost back here. I don't even know why I got rid of it originally, because of the red roof, and I was like, it looks too Moorish. But then I was like, there's plenty of vanilla cities that have these kind of buildings in them too. So like, there's no reason that it couldn't be repurposed or anything of the sort, or have been built here as well. It doesn't break the theme too much. So I got that into place, and then I abandoned the keep again for a little while, because I was like, I just realized that I'm going to go straight to this this sand storm building usage again. I keep saying sand. It's because it looks like sandstone, but it's likely more of like a concrete base. But I went back to the storm buildings, and so I was like, all right, now that I have like a template picked out, I can start really putting this together. So I start dropping buildings down, and I really wanted to make it compact as possible without being unnecessary. Like, I want a lot of buildings around, I want alleyways and stuff like that, but I don't want it to be so tight and so compact that like you can't keep track of NPCs that are maybe moving around. Like, I want it to have good flow, but also still have that really tight city feel, because again, this is a self-sustaining city. It needs to be super compact and able to support its population. Excuse me. Sorry, it's pretty late when I'm recording this right now, so I'm a little tired, but so apologies if I keep yawning. So I thought about using the Y house again throughout this area. Again, I never use the Y house, and so I'm always looking for a way to use it, but there's very few times where I've been like, oh yeah, the Y house, it looks great. I think it would probably work better if I had a large, flat, open area, and I could use that as like a centerpiece, but in this particular spot, while it is flat, it is not large enough when jammed full of other buildings. So, and like, you don't want to block off the entryway up to the keep too much, because it kind of breaks the flow of a city. You know, that's like their main building. You don't want to block it off to the point where it's just not reasonably accessible for the head of a faction. That seems redundant. That seems like bad city planning, so I don't do that. So I thought about dropping a stormhouse here. I ended up not doing it for a couple reasons. One, the base and the railing for the base when you're walking in kept clipping weirdly, and I was worried that it was going to, like, the height of the door, because I would have had to drop the door into the ground a bit. The door would have made it not accessible for NPCs to go in, and also the floor would have been below the platform, so I worried about that as well, because I don't really know how that would have worked out. So I'm using the bug house old again here too, because a lot of these old models, while they also have like a dingy texture that kind of fits with the vibe here, their doors are often moved, and to be honest, they're usually moved in a far more useful way. So like this building, I would almost never use it in vanilla, just like the vanilla variant, because I hate where the door's placed. It makes it really clunky to build around it. Whereas the old version, with the door being on the side there, it fit like a glove right in this little spot here. So really good. I went a little overboard on defense for this particular base. Admittedly, I did go a bit overboard. I ended up dropping another gate like right around the top here, and then 2 more towers. And I ended up actually walling in the top section here as well. And so like my thought was like, this needs to be a really secure location. So you have 3 walls to contend to, an entire city to fight through. Whoever runs this has been here for a while, and they know how to defend themselves. This is so stupid. So you see how I raise it up, and it looked like there was nothing there. I was so confused by this because the shadow was there. And then when I backed up, it appeared like that. Oh, there it is. I realized that it's invisible. And it's being really stupid. So I had to find the perfect angle where it was no longer invisible, and then try to line it up in the center of the platform while it was invisible. It was an absolute nightmare. I hated this whole thing. I probably could have fixed it by just saving and reloading, and it would have been fine. But I already knew this was going to be a super duper long build, and quite frankly, I just didn't do that. But once I had it in place, I saved, I reloaded. It's now persistent, so it works, it functions. You can, maneuver around it, open and close it, and it works properly. So next, dropping the walls. This ended up, at first I was having some trouble, but then I realized that I was making my life infinitely harder, so I just dropped the walls down below. I got them so they were all the appropriate length, none of those tiny little short pieces that I hate. Move them into position along the wall itself, along the platform itself, and made sure that they would all be accessible and usable. So I had to make sure that they lined up properly, and that there wasn't any like weird clipping or anything of the sort. And they do end up working. I do get these to work on like the little towers down there, but same issue. Certain locations wasn't rendering. So always great when that happens, but we got it lined up. I kind of jammed them into the gate a bit. I didn't think it mattered too much, but I got them all lined up. Yeah, a lot of micro movements here that they take forever. Yeah. This is always the most tedious part, is the walls. When you're doing any of these micro movements, even the buildings to a degree, when you're doing them, it's not as tedious as the walls. If you have to manually move your wall segments in, it is not great. Although it is a fine alternative to, trying to do it, admittedly, a legitimate way. Because I for anybody who saw my back in the days, God, it's years ago now. My Kenshi Rise of the Dwarf series, which I never got a chance to finish, unfortunately, due to real life circumstances, and then I just wasn't able to. But maybe one day I'll revisit it. But anybody who's seen that series knows that one of the things I struggled with when I was building the base on the mountaintop there was getting the walls to not absolutely spaz out and be unusable or like warped at weird. Like I can't stand that junky, like clunky, jagged look of walls. I hate when they're like zigzagging up and down and left and right, and they're just plopping and bending everywhere. Like if you were building a wall, you'd have like natural incline and all that stuff. That's fine. Inclines and ramps and stuff like that. That's totally fine. You wouldn't build a wall diagonally where it's half in the ground. Like that's even on Kenshi, where everyone is perpetually seemingly unable to build things that are functional anymore. Like even that's a new level of lazy or decision. Like I could never. That's crazy. That's crazy talk to me. So no. These towers, very happy to report that all of my fine-tuned mixed in with them here does pay off. They are usable. Very excited about that. I was super nervous about them because, again, when you're fine-tuning this stuff and you're going through and you're doing these little tiny edits, there's always a chance that it just isn't going to work, and that's always frustrating. I do have to move the buildings at some point because you can see the stairs that lead up the tower. They actually clip through the storm house there, so I do have to move the tower. The storm house itself. It ends up working out anyway because I have that little wall segment in between that kind of broke off, and I hated that, so it worked out in the long run anyway, because I got a chance to get rid of that. So very excited about that. So I dismantle that, move the storm building over, and now all of a sudden, boom, the tower is accessible, and it works. It just works. Like Todd Howard says, it just works. So same thing, move the bunkhouse over, boomski, walls accessible, all good. So I had the keep relatively built at this point. Everything was looking good. Everything was going fine. So I start dropping some more stuff. I drop a couple towers in the corner. I love my towers. Probably, honestly, the towers and the longhouses are probably my two favorite buildings. The towers, because I just love, like, you can just put them anywhere and they're fantastic. They're great when you're building them in the terrain. They're fantastic when you're using them as like actual towers, and they're just a super versatile building. And I love the longhouses because I have never seen a building that works as good at making a compact city than the longhouse. They just work. They just work. Compact castles, they work as walls. If you take two of them and put them side by side, you can put a gate between them. It's absolutely awesome. So they have super versatile building, one of my favorites. So I start looking for more stuff to kind of put here, and I really, I tried putting the Y house in the center at one point, earlier on, and I really wanted to continue that concept where I have like a centerpiece, but I couldn't figure out what I wanted, so I ended up playing with a couple things. I looked at the step house a few times. I also looked at the snail house a few times, and they always just seemed too big or clunky, or they restricted the walkway a bit too much, which I never really cared for. So it took a little while for me to find something where it wasn't going to restrict my ability to place other buildings down too. That was a big one. I didn't want the centerpiece to, I dropped the centerpiece down and then boom, I can't put anything else down because everything looks like crap now. Like there's not enough space for anything now. So, that was a concern. I do end up circumventing it with a broken tower, here in a couple of minutes, and that, ends up being how I deal with that. So these were too big. I looked at the Outpost too, and this was around the time I was kind of coming to that conclusion about the tower. And I ended up going for the broken one instead of the fully built one because I didn't want, my other thought is that like I didn't want it to overshadow the gate that's in the back that is again supposed to be like the main walkway that leads up to this large keep. And so I needed something that was going to act as a good centerpiece, but also not kind of detract from the vision of that tower. I mean of that like main keep there. So I ended up going with a broken tower. And it worked out pretty good anyway because it created that natural flow, and I connect a couple more buildings to it, and then all of a sudden I have, you know, an area with that's kind of segmented into small districts with, you know, decent alleyways and like back alleys, but not so many that everything is like really tight and you can't keep track of anything. So I drop a longhouse right here. You know, I fill it with a little bottle to get it into appropriate position, but I do end up finding something that works where I'm not cutting off those small shacks either. And once they're in position, you know, I kind of have that general city layout. Yeah, there was a lot of movement there. So I did get rid of one of the small shacks. I kept the second one, backed everything up, got it nice into place, and then boom, right there. That's the city layout. And it was super, super satisfying when I finally got it. That last longhouse, like I said, it just tied everything together. It's a super versatile building. So I was really happy with that. And now I had the keep, and I had the city, and then I had this empty platform, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I kind of thought about it for a couple minutes, and I was like, I was already on the fence about this platform, because the idea was like you have one low platform, one tall one in the back where the main keep's held, and then maybe you have a side platform that's in the middle, so it kind of looks like this like off-kilt, multi-tiered segmented city. I wasn't sure what to do with it. So while I was figuring out what to do with it, I tried, went in for a couple of the smaller things. I really had a hard time with the ramps for arguably a really stupid reason. I could not find the node to get them to connect. So I have the sideways ramps mod just to help conserve space. And so I was like, I'll drop a couple sideways ramps. But the only ramp that would clip to the mod, that would like snap, that would snap to the wall, was super far over on the storm house. And I was like, I guess I can, like, you can see there, it snaps in just for a second and then it kicks off. And I was like, okay, so is there anywhere else? Because that's kind of awful. But like looking at it, it would still function. The problem is that I need it to be symmetrical, because again, I'm a lunatic, and that directly interferes with the location of the bug house over there. So I can't do that. I need like a normal spot, but I couldn't find it where it would snap anywhere. But finally, I found it out, and when I dropped them, I was very satisfied. So now those walls up top are functional, and they did not interfere with any of the buildings that I just placed, because I was like, I just got this to where I wanted it, and now I'm having a hard time with these friggin' ramps. But so, I kind of figured that maybe I should get rid of this platform. And I was like, well, what if I drop an ancient lab instead? At first I thought maybe I could put it on top of it, but that just seemed kind of ridiculous. There's no, like, why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense. So I got rid of the Lagoon platform, and then my thought was that I could drop one of these ancient citadels or the ancient factory, or one of the two, and have the ramp go straight up off the platform onto the thing. So it's almost like it was built off to the side of it, and it flows really well. So I dropped that one. And then I ran into my next problem, which was that because the Lagoon platform was there, I couldn't get the ancient lab ramp to properly snap into the spot that I needed it to. And I also couldn't figure out which one to use, because again, they wouldn't snap. So like there wasn't really a lot that I could work with. So I had to find one that already had the ramp on it, and it worked out, because the one I ended up going with, not only does it already have the ramp on it, but the ground is kind of broken on it. It's a little busted. It's old. It's messed up. And that's the ancient citadel. And for two reasons, it works out for two reasons. One, it kind of adds, like, it kind of keeps with the flow of the look. It's not as sandy as like the ancient lab would have been, but I felt like it kind of like worked with the flow of the actual Lagoon platforms more than the buildings, because this is arguably an older structure, so it wouldn't look like the sandstone buildings, or the cement buildings. But and also one of the pylons for the platform happens to line right up perfectly with the damaged segment of the ramp going up. So that was cool too. So, but now that I had that figured out, I needed to start thinking about how they would eat. Obviously, they are self-sufficient, and this is like an isolated, self-sufficient place, so they need to have some kind of food. So I was going to build a really, really large farm. The problem that I was having with the farm, at least on the left side, was these stupid stones that are all over the ground, because lo-fi, how dare they pay attention to environment and whatnot, and giving us better things than just clunky ground textures. How dare they? They made it really difficult to place good farms down on rocky terrain. So shame. So I dropped the storm house down. I figured this will be like their storage area for when the farmers are working. And I end up, going to make the farms on the right side. So I kind of look at a couple different things. I was only looking at that wheat farm specifically because I had never seen the model before, so I just didn't know what it looked like. But I dropped down these farms, and again, neurotic, so I wanted to make sure all the fences lined up so it didn't look like these were like separate farms, but they were all one large farm that was maybe segmented for whatever reason. But they were all part of the same thing. And so I dropped those down, and the farm is there. And then I thought on the other side about maybe, we did wheat on this side, maybe on the other side doing like cacti, or I think it was a high fertility yield. So I ended up doing, trying to do vegetable farms, but not succeeding on that. I ended up scrapping that idea. So spoilers on that. But so now they have their farm. They are self-sufficient in terms of their farming. So we drop some water. This is the vegetable part. So I try really hard to get these lined up. It was super frustrating too, because I got them lined up in the same way that I did the wheat farm. Like they're in the same direction, and I lined them up what I thought was good, and I didn't rotate them at all. But then when I go to do like the next row, they are not aligned properly, and it ends up being super cockeyed, and then I end up giving up on doing it on this side anyway, because all of the rocks would have thrown off my feng shui. And it didn't work. Oh yeah, and I couldn't get the ground to be level enough to where I could see the fence right there. That's when I realized right there, the fences do not line up. And that drove me nuts. That drove me absolutely crazy. And then I realized how off kill everything was, and I immediately gave up. I was like, nope, we're not doing it. That side is just it's just a dirty mound now. Nobody does anything over there. We don't do stuff. So back to the functional farm. So I dropped the wind pump for pumping water. And I thought about dropping a well, but I was like, why would I need that? So instead I drop a water tower. I wouldn't need the well because that's what literally the giant pump there is for the water. So, and then I head back inside. And once I get inside, this is around the time that I start doing some interior decorating of the buildings. I doubt you'll ever see me do interior decorating of the buildings as like a whole video, because I'm terrible at it. I can do it a little bit, but I take even longer than this, and it's never something that I think is good enough that you guys would want to see. I tend to be, despite being super focused on aesthetics and functionality outside of the base with like the shells and the layout and stuff. Once you get inside, my mind always ends up going strictly to functionality. And so I'm just not good at it. This crane is purely a decorative piece. My thought was that like, this is how they like move materials to build, like increase the buildings, or like maybe they move shipments in, because again, this is supposed to be like a cultural hub. Like at the center of trade. This crane I moved around 100 times, because you'll see that the wheel in the back was clipping through the ground, and that was unacceptable. But then when I moved it, all of the legs weren't touching the ground, and that was also unacceptable, because why wouldn't it be? So a lot of the interior decorations that you're going to see, a lot of the exterior decorations with like non-buildings, are going to be like sitting pillows and like trying to make it look like an economic hub, a place that, a lot of market stalls, a lot of shops are happening. I made like an outdoor bar at some point, so that's really cool. So dropped some Harpoon auto turrets, Mark II with lights. Again, this is a tech hunter hideout. They have power. Power is very important to them. And they're also well defended. And not necessarily because they get attacked often, but because the things that would attack you out here are going to attack in droves. We'll say hypothetically, even if the crab raiders came after them, if they come after them with good amounts of crabs, I mean, this could be a fight on their hands. So they have to be stacked in terms of defense. And that means a lot of turrets, a lot of trained, skilled you know, people on these turrets doing their things. Dropped a couple in the towers up there, just so like the idea is maybe if they're attacking the city, the ones up in the towers can snipe down from that upper keep. So drop those wind generators in the back, just as I said I would. I played around with getting them lined up in such a way. One of the things that drives me absolutely batty is when I see people build bases and then they put their wind generators too close together and the blades of the fan clip through each other. And again, that's a crazy person thing, but it's unacceptable when I'm doing builds, so I have to make sure they are spaced far enough apart where even when they are rotating, so the one that's in front of it, I have to double check, like I have to look at that to decide if they're going to be too close to each other and they might rotate into one another, because that's unacceptable. But, you know, I dropped 3 for 100 power each. I figured 300 power would be enough to keep this place up and running. I hope so. I mean, they might use more, but who knows. Next was trying to find a stone processor. You know, I gave these guys an electric mine. You know, like it's a fully functioning mine, motorized mine, because, you know, they again, they're a cultural hub. They have a lot of technology. They're not going to be out there swinging a pickaxe. They've got a machine for that. There's an app for that. So, and then I thought about maybe dropping a stone resource or anything like that, just to kind of add to diversify the outside, but I decided against it. Dropped a stone processor, just because again, you're gonna need that to make more building materials, and dropped a small shack for resource collection, or you know, places to drop those kinds of things. So not that there's going to be a ton of resources out there, but just kind of a shacks to drop things, and also just to add more buildings outside. You know, it really ties everything together, cover up some of those blank spaces. So you know, I went through for a little while longer looking for more things that maybe I could add to the base up top. Couple more buildings that maybe I want to add, and then I ended up just going fully into decoration mode after a little while. This was just me kind of playing through, because there was a lot of new stuff in there from me downloading and using Forgotten Buildings. So I wasn't quite sure about what all there was. I thought maybe putting a statue right here, but it doesn't really belong to any particular faction, which I say ironically, because later I end up putting a knocked over statue of the Holy Phoenix up in the main keep. But like there's a couple different avenues I guess I could use to try and spin that for the story, which is, you know, maybe some of these people originally were Holy Nation exiles and they came out here and then joined the Tech Hunters, or, you know, there's a bunch of different ways that I could go, or maybe it's just a rejection of the Holy Nation in general, or maybe it's a really, really old statue from, you know, years and years prior, when maybe it was still the Cult of Stobe and everything would happen. You know, there's a lot of angles I guess you could try and spin for it. But mostly I was admittedly just trying to fill some space to make it feel lively. So yeah, so I ended up going through, and and what I wanted to do was divide the area into sections. Like the actual city portion into sections with, like, where they have a different purpose per the area. I mean, I say, I'm really trying to explain it as if you guys don't know what a sectioned off like portion of the city is. Yeah, so I wanted one area that was like primarily markets and stuff like that. And I wanted that to be what you walk into. Like, you come into this city, and the first thing you see is people walking around and sitting, and you see these tents out and these market stalls and these tables, and like, I didn't want it to just be about buying and selling goods. I wanted it also to be about like culture and like food. So I ended up building like a restaurant type bar thing off the side here. And I put a little shop counter, and the idea is that you could like load up the shop counter with like food and booze, and people would come into your city and they would sit at those tables and they'd drink and they'd eat and they'd have a good time. And again, this is like a cultural economic hub. It's a big place. A lot of people come through here. They're all you either live here or you're one of the few travelers that come out here. But the travelers that come out here, they're not like trade caravans. Well, I probably shouldn't say that. They're not like your average travelers. They're people that are more accustomed to danger and tough areas. And these are going to be the kind of people that also have a lot of things to trade. So, they may not have traditional trade caravans as much as they have like tech hunters that are trading rare things they found in their travels. It may not, stuff like that. So I really wanted this to feel like a lively, busy, like almost bizarre type area. And so I created all these little like shacks and these little tented areas, and I created a few here. And then later on, I'll actually go through and I fill them up with like people sitting down and I mean like sitting mats and interactive things like that, and just a lot of places for people to do things. And then I also end up adding a couple of other shops throughout this place to kind of add things, spice things up a little bit, make it feel more real. So, and some of these buildings are would be internally turned into like a bar, or like a restaurant or an inn or anything like that. And some of them would be, the blacksmith, that little building, the storm building right there. That would be a blacksmith's building, which you'll see here shortly why I say that. Maybe some of those buildings in the rears would be residential buildings or apartment buildings, but you'd also have, the police station, like all of those trademark stuff. So everything has a purpose, but I wanted it to feel lively, was my point. That when you come in, it feels like a real place that could exist in Kenshi. So that's why this section is mostly just me going around kind of adding random stuff and trying to like play with things and move these bits of furniture around, because the sandboxing in Kenshi is actually pretty easy to read, which is that when they're not doing the assigned thing that you give them, they're going to find the nearest idle spot, which is like somewhere to sit or anything of the sort, and they're going to do that. So like you want the areas that your NPCs that are not doing anything to feel like they are enjoying leisure time, and so you put down these tables and you put down all these sitting pads and that kind of stuff. So that way when they're not doing stuff, it's almost as if they are going out and getting food. They're talking, they're interacting. And then if you fill the rest of the base with like mercenaries that you hire to protect your base, they'll wander around. So then you have this nice feel where people are sitting down, they're eating, they're chatting. You'll have dialogue going on in the background, and you'll also have all these people walking around and interacting with stuff. And the mercenaries will also buy stuff from your shop. I don't know if you guys know that. Fun little exploit. If you have food in one of your shop counters, not only is food arguably one of the things that gets bought pretty much the only amount of the time, like every so often you can sell a piece of gear or something like that, but most people don't carry enough cats on them to buy that stuff. Food and stuff like that is pretty much the only time you're gonna get someone to buy stuff consistently. So just keep that in mind when you're building a shop counter. But my point is that if people will buy food, if you have a base that makes food and then you put it in a shop counter and you hire mercenaries, they will go into that shop and buy the food. And you can usually, honestly, if you do it right, you can make your money back. So like the money that you spent to get them there is going to come back. So right here, I started putting tables outside, and I really wanted to create like this outdoor, like sitting bar type area where like a lot of people would go, and it's like an outdoor, like a restaurant or something, because again, this is a big city. People, it's not just a military base. It's not just a place for a faction. It's a place where people live. And so I dropped this big table on the outside here. This is like, I hadn't quite decided exactly what this back area was going to be, but I wanted to create like another communal area for the people that might live here, because a lot of these buildings on the right side are residential buildings. So maybe they come out and they have this big table where like everyone can like hang out and talk and stuff like that. It's very much like a compound community. These people don't like live here and, howdy neighbor, how are you? They, everybody knows each other. They've all lived here for a very long time. There's a good number of them. Like it's a big tight knit community, and they all live on this giant platform, and they all have their own designated jobs and positions, and they live for the quote tourism and the trade. So an area for all of them to kind of interact and hang out. I drop a couple shop counters, couple chests, and just random things to fill some space. And I always try to make things a little off kilter. Like you'll notice a couple of minutes ago with the rugs, I laid them all down straight, and then I went through and I rotated all of them. And the reason I rotated all of them is because variation is important, and you want it to look variated, have some variety in the way that it's moved and placed, because it looks more organic. You know, it's not always going to be straight, especially in Kenshi. They're not nearly as worried about aesthetics as I am, so they're not going to care that it's a little off kilter. So I start dropping some shop counters because, again, this is a market. People are shopping here. And the intent is that not only are people shopping here, but like, it's not just for looks. People are actually going to be buying the things that are in this city. Like, people are going to be coming and visiting the city, and they're going to be actually buying the goods that are there. So I made this really cool, like, bar type thing by the restaurant. And my idea here was that you could fill all three of the shops with grog and food and everything else, and then NPCs will actually come and they'll buy that stuff, and you know, they might sit down and rest at the tables nearby. It'd just be really good. And there's mods that add, you know, animations to certain tables and certain, you know, sitting animations, stuff like that, where they might be drinking. So you can kind of play with those too. But I started dropping crates around. Again, just trying to fill some space. I didn't want it to feel super open. That's one of the problems that I have with the Lagoon platform specifically. It's such a cool idea, right? This big, like, mechanized platform that's raising everything up. The problem is it's so flat. And because it's so flat, there's not really any variation in, like, everything can feel really empty and barren when you're walking through it. Like, if you put yourself in the eyes of an NPC, it looks so barren because the ground is just this wooden platform, and it's just all this empty space. And so that's one of the reasons why building with the Lagoon platform is so difficult, because when you're trying to fill in that empty space, you have to put a lot of stuff, or else it just looks empty. And, you know, I try my best on this particular build to deal with that and to navigate that, and I hope I did a good job. I think I did a good job, but, you know, obviously you guys are all entitled to your own opinions, and you'll have to let me know. But so, you know, dropping down the stools, I want everything to be good there. And then I still had this big gap right here, right in the center. I feel like I had a good amount of stuff in a lot of other areas, but like right here, big gap. And I'm like, what do I do with this big gap? And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to drop these prisoner poles, right? And the idea is that when they do get attacked, or if someone commits a crime, they are chained to a pole in the center of town. And then while everyone else is eating and like engaging in trade and stuff like that, it's almost like they're throwing, you know, they're throwing tomatoes and crap at them. Humiliation. It's like they're flogging, right? So I drop these 3 poles, I rotate them, and then keep dropping them, so that way it's like 3 people tied to one pole. And so those are like the shaming poles. If you commit a crime or anything like that, you don't necessarily get arrested, but you might have to do time in the pole. And if you're doing time in the pole, you're gonna get some stuff. You're gonna dust switch thrown at your head, which sounds awful, or a food cube, because we're not quite sure what a food cube is. But I don't think I want to get hit in the face with it. So, and then right here again, big empty space, right in the center of the main keep, and that's unacceptable. So. I'm trying to find something to fill it, and as I told you earlier, I end up filling it with a toppled over statue of Holy Lord Phoenix. And so that was, you know, that's cool. Another thing that I end up doing too is trying to figure out like the barracks situation, because like I didn't want in terms of like a realistic barracks, you would want it to be up towards the main keep, right? And so because of that, you need to, the reason why you want it to be up by the main keep too is that you want all of your soldiers as close to your leader as possible. And so I end up making the barracks up there. I got distracted in the middle of trying to figure out the barracks thing. I remember this very well, actually. I got really distracted trying to make the barracks, and I was like, oh, well, before they make the barracks, I should probably like maybe add an outdoor shop. And the idea of putting a blacksmith outside seemed really cool to me. The machine is obviously less functional outside, but we're kind of going for a combination of function and aesthetics. Plus, it's as long as there's light and not rain, it's fine. And it doesn't rain that much in the Howler Maze. So, and also like the idea that like you could be shopping or like sitting at those tables outdoors and watching like the blacksmiths make their stuff. So like you're walking through the market and you're looking around, you got people shopping, you got food, you got drink, you've got the blacksmith just pounding away, beating plates, and you know, someone else is at the forge making a sword. That's a really cool concept to me. So I put a heavy armor smithy and a weaponsmith down in the area, and then I kind of played with the layout a bit, and I ended up merging the two right there, where it would look like they were like on one side of each other, and I made them mirror each other. So you have a plate beater on both sides, and then you have the weaponsmith and the other one. And then as people walk by, you know, they could watch these master artisans and these masters of their craft and these blacksmiths work through creating these things. And that was, I kind of went on a bender trying to figure out where I could put like other tables so like people could watch, you know, them making leather and them crafting these goods and stuff that they're going to buy. And then I realized that you can't place most of them outside of a building. So I scrapped that idea real quick and went right back to trying to find other ways to fill the clutter. And this is where I dropped the broken emperor statue. I did the broken one because, the old broken one specifically because the change in tone makes it look more old, and I could find a better justification for it. Still can't say I found a solid one, but like now it was really coming together. I was really excited about the way it was starting to look. It was looking really compact, but it still had that multi-tiered feel that I wanted going into this. Was very excited about it. So, and then this was, again, I was looking for new things that I could do to spice stuff up. And again, that was when I went to the training thing that I was talking about a minute ago. So I wanted the barracks to be up here. I ended up settling on the bug house, and so I needed to give them like a little area to train in. I wanted the barracks to be closer to the main keep because their primary responsibility is to protect the leader of their faction, right? And so the leader of their faction, the leader of this city, is up there. And so like it only makes sense to me that like the barracks would be nearby in the event the city gets attacked, or anything like that happens. The guards can, they're not only are they funneling out into the city, but they're also right there by the leader's side. So that was something I really wanted to consider because, again, I really try to think about what's the best, most realistic placement for, these things moving forward. So I also, I use this, the CBT gym equipment mod as well, and that's really cool. I was super stoked about that mod because not only does it add like the gym equipment in, but it also adds in like actual animations for it. So like when you're benching on the weight bench, you're actually doing the benching. It looks really good. It's very smooth. It looks solid, and it's a way to train athletics and strength, which, other than carrying around corpses or filling a backpack with junk, we don't, typically have like a real way to do that. So that's always fun too. And it gives you a way to train toughness without risking, getting murdered, because that happens a lot. Happens a lot too in early Kenshi playthroughs where you are trying to train your toughness and you just get absolutely wrecked. So I played around for another couple of minutes after this, and I couldn't really find anything that I thought I needed. And after a minute or two, it kind of dawned on me that I was done. Everything looked solid. I was satisfied with it, and so. That's that. So, cue the montage.
All my walls are covered in words, and while you sleep, I mark my goals. Stand tall, think clear. Don't let them see a hint of fear. Lines and dots, zoom in, zoom out. Open your window, let them hear you shout. Right on the poles, right on the street. Always remember the future is near. Cut some cords, scratch some scars. Put on your cape and jump from the car. Open your mouth, take a deep breath. Run fast and don't stop at the end. You can be